So almost 10 years ago, I decided to be a teacher, a profession that something I never thought I would take up in life. And it actually ended up teaching me a lot of skills and mindsets that I never learned in college and in school. I'm going to take you back a little bit to my journey. I actually studied in a Hindi medium school in Gwalior, Madhya Pradesh. And one point my parents decided to shift me to an English medium school because that was the trend back then. I was a bit nervous, but overall excited about the change. And that feeling did not last long because I remember after a week I was begging my father to not send me to school. My school was a bit strange. It had a strange rule. To teach us English, what they did is basically they asked that if you speak in Hindi or in your native language, you will be asked to give like 2 rupees fine. Now, as somebody who did not know English, plus my pocket money at that point was 5 rupees for entire week, the only option I had was to be silent. So I sat at the back of the class, not saying a single word. Teachers did not really mind, till the time I was not creating disruptions. I used to go back home and try to mug up a lot of stuff like we did in our childhood, just thinking that I'll eventually catch up. I remember one occasion, primarily in one of the classroom, a teacher asked a question and I was so excited because after months I knew the answer. So without even thinking, without raising my hand, I just shouted out the answer, feeling proud of myself that I have achieved something. Did not last. The teacher called me in front, slapped me really hard in front of all the students, telling me to not answer without turn. School was a blur after that. I actually, even if you ask me right now, I don't remember my middle school. I was just one of the children who sat at the back of the class not knowing what's going on. College was pretty much the same. I studied in Delhi, thinking that Delhi, a big city, will provide me opportunities. I did well academically in college, but if the question is asked what skills and mindsets did I learn, I don't have an answer. In 2015, an opportunity presented, and I decided to join Teach for India Fellowship with only one thought in my mind, that can I give an education to children which I did not get as a child. I was placed in a government school in Pune. Teach for India places young professionals and working professionals in low-income, under-resourced schools with the idea that we will transform the life of children we serve. I was given an opportunity to teach in a government school in Pune, 4th graders. And what I thought is an act of service actually ended up teaching me more. And I'm going to take you through the skills that I built as a teacher, which still have an impact on me. One of the most important skills that I could think of was visionary thinking. For the first time in my life, when I stepped inside the classroom, my program manager back then asked me to create a vision and goal for my classroom. I did it for the first time in my life. I wrote in big letters, by the end of the year, I want all my children to be at grade level and make conscious choices. When I joined the fellowship, all my students on an average were 3 to 4 years behind their reading level. That means a 5th grader could not read a grade 1 textbook. And almost 50% of them did not have basic mathematical numeracy. Towards the end of my fellowship, almost all my students came to achieve grade level proficiency, and some of them took admissions in a few best schools of Pune, teaching me power of vision and power of goals. Something that came super handy 10 years later after my fellowship, when this year in May 2024, when I took over the role of City Director of Teach for India Hyderabad, the first thing they asked me to do was to create vision and strategy for my team, something I learned 10 years back. Next thing, which I learned during my fellowship, was adaptability. Classroom is a super dynamic environment, and it becomes even more dynamic in an under-resourced school. Some days will be filled with noise coming from outside. Some days our classrooms used to be taken away, leaving us to teach in hallways. There were unannounced holidays. Lessons used to bomb even after a lot of preparation. Students used to get admitted to the classroom in middle of the year. And across all of that, we had to continuously adapt. And I think I learned more about adaptability through these experiences than the change management course I did in my college. One day I specifically remember, this is that day where there was a teacher shortage and a teacher training camp happening in our school. So I was asked to teach around 70 students, and we did not even have a classroom. So I took them to the ground, and I did not have a lesson plan prepared for it. So in that moment, I used my students, figured out a way to make them learn in a small group, one of the best classes I ever took. This skill of adaptability played out a major role when in 2021, I got a chance to start my own school in Pune during COVID. The school shut down multiple times. We had to teach online, go back offline, fight for every single admission because students were going back to villages. We had to find learning centers in the community. We had to find ways to upskill our teachers in those times. Adaptability played a major role at that time. A very simple skill, or a 21st century skill of decision making, which sounds so obvious, but is not taught in colleges, is something I learned in my fellowship. I had to make countless decisions as a teacher. The research says that a teacher makes around 1,500 decisions per day. I backed that up, I was there. I had to think about what lesson to teach according to the levels of my students. I had to frame questions according to the different needs of my children. I had to decide the seating arrangement to best support them. I had to analyze classroom data and make changes to my next lesson plan. I had to visit my students' houses to gather information about their life so that I can plan accordingly. I was making a lot of decisions and analyzing them every single day. Had never done it in my life because in college and school I was asked what to do, not to decide what to do. This came again very helpful 2 years later when in 2019 I joined an organization, and when I joined it, they asked me to start their training wing from scratch, and I had to take multiple decisions around what would be the strategy be, what objectives to teach, analyze the needs of the teacher, make resources, and again, execute training sessions and gauge the impact of it. Required countless decisions, something I learned in fellowship, not in my college. And one of the most important skills of a leader is to have emotional intelligence. And these two words I learned for the first time when I joined Teach for India. They talked about empathy and reflection. I had never heard those words. Even if I heard those, I never practiced those. In every space of Teach for India, we were asked to think from the point of view of others and reflect on our experiences. Something which has become a second nature now was not so normal back then. I quickly realized in my teaching that students actually learn from your emotions and actions, not so much from your words. I had to learn to self-regulate, learn how to sense emotions of different kids in the room, also find ways to motivate myself during tough times and continue motivating my children as well. This is something which came super useful not only in work but in life. As right now and sometimes back, as I work and live with 300 humans, I have to continuously use emotional intelligence and think about human behavior while I try to be a better human, not only with the people I coach, not only these students I mentor, but with my wife, with my friends, my family, and my siblings. It also prompted me to actually start a school in 2021, which I talked about, which was centered around consciousness and emotional intelligence. We deliberately created structures in this school where students got a chance to talk to each other, reflect, and think from other people's point of view. This is just one such story of my life, but Teach for India in last 15 years have produced 5,000 such stories. 5,000 alumni have graduated from Teach for India Fellowship, who are now directly impacting around 1 lakh children and reaching over 50 million children in India. Some of them have started their own schools, some of them train teachers, school principals, and a lot of them are also working directly with the government, making changes. With only one vision in mind, that we will work collectively to transform the lives of 1 in 10 low-income children in our regions through an education that unleashes the potential of self, others, and India. And why we continue to do so is because ed crisis is still a big challenge that our country faces. With 32 million children still not going to school, and 50% of the school-going children dropping out before 10th grade. Education crisis is one of the biggest issues that we face as a country right now, and we need more and more educators and leaders to get us out of it. Till the time, one day when all children will receive an excellent education. Thank you.